One of the most important position groups in all of football is getting a major facelift for the Colts in 2023. So how's it going to turn out? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, my nerds? Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by our sponsor, Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL, and they will throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order, because who doesn't need 45 of those bad boys rolling around in your kitchen? I have them. I use them all. You will get a new one if you go to birddogs.com and order through us. I'm Jake Arthur. He is Zach Hicks. You know the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. I'm your resident boots on the ground credentialed member of the Colts media, reporting to you from the facility. And Zach is the most flawless, dangerous film guy who has ever set foot on Indianapolis soil in this market. Say hello to Zach.
You know, you had two chances now to say on planet Earth, Jake. On planet Earth.
We'll get there. We will get there when they start colonizing the moon and things like that.
I appreciate the kind words. Jake.
Yes. Always. On today's show, we're going to continue our position-by-position breakdown for the Colts. We're finally getting to the end. And this one's going to be a good one. We've been waiting on this for the past couple weeks. We're talking cornerbacks today. Real slow news time for the Colts at cornerback recently. Not so much. Yeah. But we're going to kind of tackle the top of that depth chart and who was supposed to be the starting trio. The next group, which is guys we're pretty confident are either going to make the roster or they're going to be in the mix to be in the rotation. And then last up, bubble guys who still kind of have an outside shot of earning a spot, dark horses. We've seen it as recently as Dallas Flowers last year. So we're going to go top to bottom cornerbacks today. Zach, we obviously have to start with the Isaiah Rodgers Sr. situation. Man, he was one of your top two cornerbacks this year. It's going to be Kenny Rogers, who never leaves or can I say Kenny Rogers?
Yeah. Kenny.
Wow.
Not the country singer.
No, okay. You guys are going to catch on to something that was so unintentional. It's going to come up in the comments. Wow. Okay. Kenny Moore is your nickel. That's a 1,000 snap guy. And then Isaiah Rodgers was going to be right there with him, probably another 1,000 snap guy. That's your top outside corner. And so he's got the gambling, the sports betting stuff looming overhead. We still haven't heard about the punishment. That seems like it's coming down the pike at any point. However it goes, you got to think he's not going to play this year and very well may not be with the Colts at all after this. So you look beyond that, and Kenny Moore and JuJu Brents is probably the guy you're most confident in. He was the Colts' second-round pick. He's a guy that, fits the defensive scheme like a glove. He was handpicked for this. He hasn't practiced yet, of course. He's recovering from a wrist injury. He's supposed to be good for training camp. There are a couple other guys that factor into this as well. But I think once camp starts, we're really going to start to see that take shape. So, Zach, this is a totally different looking group than last year. You had Stephon Gilmore at the top. You had Brandon Faison taking up a lot of snaps. Rodgers obviously played into that as well. So how are you feeling about this group heading into 2023?
All I can think about right now is I think Kenny Rogers' biggest song was called The Gambler.
I was going to leave it to the guys in the comments to mention that. I don't think I have ever called Kenny Moore Kenny Rogers. But I morphed Isaiah Rodgers and Kenny Moore together to create probably one of the best sound bites in Locked On Colts history. So whoever wants to go ahead, rip it, throw it on Twitter. Let's go.
Anyway, getting to my thoughts on this, I'm laughing about this, about your flub there, but at the end of the day, I'm just heartbroken about the Isaiah Rodgers Sr. situation. Really talented player, really good guy that I've had a chance to talk to over the years, and it just sucks that he made this mistake. I'm not saying that whatever penalty and whatever punishment he gets, he's not deserving of it, because I think even if you were to ask him, he would understand that he's going to be deserving of whatever punishment he gets. And I think it would be wrong to include him in any plans for the Colts 2023 season, because it's very unlikely that he's going to be involved with the Colts going forward, especially with this upcoming season. So the Colts have to prepare for life outside of Isaiah Rodgers Sr. We have to prepare for life without Isaiah Rodgers Sr. this next season. And it becomes the Kenny Moore, the second situation, or the Kenny Moore, the second show, along with JuJu Brents and a couple other young players as well. And it's fascinating to think about it, because, the Colts defense last year, for all the flaws that this team had, and then just not being a very good team, and even the defense struggled late in the year, but for the most part, this defense was great on third downs. The cornerback group played really well. I mean, Kenny Moore had one of his worst seasons, but it's not like he played horribly. Like, he was still like below average. Like, it's still not like a terrible season, but Isaiah Rodgers Sr. played well last year. Stephon Gilmore, who's no longer with the team and now in Dallas, played really well last year. And now we're kind of seeing a completely different cornerback room. Kenny Moore the second is the most experienced player in that cornerback room. And behind him, with the second most snaps ever played in the NFL, is Kevin Tolliver, who hasn't played since 2020. And we're going to talk about in segment 3. So that shows you how long of a shot he is to make this team. So it's a very, very young cornerback room with a lot of inexperience. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it also means there's a lot of risk in what the Colts are rolling out this season. So I think it kind of plays in line with kind of what they're doing with this team, where it's like, we're going to see what these young guys got. We're going to see what we have moving forward. And this kind of plan kind of shows that. But yeah, it's going to be a huge season for JuJu Brents, a huge season for Dallas Flowers when we talk about him. And Kenny Moore the second, you want to see him bounce back and actually solidify that slot role yet again, especially when his new contract is coming up here pretty soon. So it's a very risky cornerback room, but at the end of the day, when you're going young already on offense, you're going young at several key positions, why not put the young guys out there at corner and just see what they have? It's probably not going to be pretty. It's going to be very Anthony Richardson-esque, where it's like, you want it to be great from day one, but it's probably not going to be. You just want to see that progression throughout the season. That's the biggest thing right there. And, we just have to hope for the best with these young kids out there. I think we're going to see some good progression throughout the year, but I think it's going to be rough at certain points for sure.
Yeah, I think I get the feeling now that they are going to go ahead and let it roll with the young guys, because, I mean, they've known about this Rodgers stuff for a while and haven't brought anyone of significance in to kind of fill that void. And some of these young guys have looked pretty good in OTAs and now the veteran minicamp. We obviously haven't seen Brents, but they were confident enough in him to pick him in the second round. Darius Rush looked really good before he left with his injury. Jalen Jones has looked pretty good. He's made some plays. Dallas Flowers has taken a leap as a second-year player, has at least looked good in practice. So at this point, you invested in these guys who fit your system really well. They have great size and athleticism. Like, just go ahead and roll with them. I think that is what they're going to do. We'll talk about a couple of these other guys that factor into the mix as well here in a moment. Next, again, who's going to play a key role by being the next man up. But first, a word from Bird Dogs. Fellas, it's summer, and that means by no means are we to wear pants when we don't have to. It's hot out here. I was at the zoo all day. It was so hot, and if I would have been wearing pants, it would have been upsetting. But Bird Dogs has you covered with the best shorts in the game. They make you look good, and their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. That's right. Skies out, thighs out, fellas. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They also use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, so you don't just smell like one of those dudes that's stinking up the gym. That's not good times. So I'm a bigger guy. I've had to donate my Bird Dogs material to some of my, more handsome, svelte friends. But, they all love them, and they tend to murder me in golf when they're wearing them. That may be due to other factors. I'm really not sure. But I do, however, have this sweet tumbler that Bird Dog send with your order that I mentioned at the top of the show. This thing, it keeps drinks cool even in your hot car. Like, I will get in my car at the end of the day and I still have ice in my coffee. So they're real legit. You know, if you love pants and you love cool drinks, go ahead and get one of those bad boys. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that.
And everydayers, we're going to continue this series. We're going to finish it off next week where we cover the safety position. So all you beautiful everydayers, set those alarms nice and early for Tuesday of next week while we cover the safety position on the Indianapolis Colts. All right, Jake. So we kind of talked about in that first segment where JuJu Brents and Kenny Moore II are the roster locks in the cornerback room. And I think what's fascinating about this cornerback room for the Indianapolis Colts right now is we have two roster locks in a position group that they usually keep between 5 and 6 guys. We have 2 guys that are certainly making the roster. Everyone else, it's up for grabs. Like, I'm not going to say Darius Rush doesn't have an inside edge. Dallas Flowers doesn't have an inside edge, which we're going to talk about here in a second, but it's completely up for grabs. It could be any of these next guys we're talking about. Like, they're all in a similar tier where they're all fighting with each other for those last 3 to 4 spots. It is truly wide open going into camp. Now, we did kind of tear these out a little bit when we were talking. You know, I think the next guys up are Dallas Flowers, Darius Rush, who was a 5th-round pick out of South Carolina this past season, Tony Brown, who played a couple of snaps last season, has played a decent amount of snaps in his NFL career, and Jalen Jones, the Colts' 7th-round pick this past season. I think those are the next 4 guys competing for those 3 to 4 spots, but I'm not going to rule out anybody right now because it's not like any of these guys are proven. You know, Tony Brown's your most proven guy in that group, and he's a journeyman. You know, he's been on practice squads. He's a special teamer. You know, he doesn't really play many defensive snaps. So what do you think about this next tier of players, these 4 players competing for those 3 to 4 spots? And do you think any of these guys are kind of roster locks as of right now, Jake?
I don't want to call Brown a lock because of the other younger guys, but he does offer some things that you want to rely on. So he is a really good special teamer. He's one of the Colts, you know, core guys, but he also could play inside and out. You really, especially with Kenny Moore's injury history, you're really going to need that to rely on as a backup. And again, Isaiah Rodgers would have been someone that factored into that as well, playing inside. So you got to look at, you're dealing with a bunch of bigger cornerbacks too. Your smaller guys, you know, you don't want to invest heavily in those smaller slot type guys, but you're kind of limited with them. So I think Tony Brown is relatively safe. But I also kind of think that's going to lend itself to keeping more cornerbacks this year, especially with what just happened with Daniel Scott, the safety. So Dallas Flowers, I think I think he's really going to endear himself even further to the coaching staff. They really like him. The players really like him. They're giving him an opportunity out there in practice. He had a good mini camp this last week. So far he has a ton to gain. Like, he was slated to be a potential breakout going into the draft, and then they drafted 3 guys. But, you know, now one of those guys hasn't practiced at all, and then someone ahead of him is going to be probably suspended for the year. So Dallas Flowers has a lot to gain. I think he is pretty safe. I don't want to say he's a lock by any means because I do think they're going to let it be survival of the fittest. But I feel really good about Flowers and Brown's chances. Now, Rush has had a really good spring and summer as well. But he's had that, I think, a hamstring injury and hasn't been able to practice. As long as he keeps up what he's done when he's been on the field, I think he should be good. But of course, hamstrings, if I remember correctly, that can be really nagging and can keep you out like most of the summer. Like Paris Campbell, for example, his rookie summer, he was killing guys running routes and everything the first couple of days, and then he missed most of training camp after that. So as long as he doesn't miss like an extended period of time, I think Rush stands to have a good chance. So what is that, like 6 guys? You're looking 5, not counting Rodgers, but those guys will do pretty good. Jalen Jones, I know you've talked really highly of him being a late round guy. Again, I can only go off what I've seen, and he had a really good practice on Tuesday, had a pick against Sam Ehlinger, and then broke up another pass from him just a short while later. And then I didn't really have anything negative to say about him the next day either. So I think it's going to be a youth movement with Tony Brown, 442 career snaps, being like the elder statesman of this next group up, outside of Kenny Moore. But I really like the chances of each of these guys. No one's a lock other than the first group we talked about, but I don't see any reason why those other guys don't all have a chance at it. And I think they really ought to carry more bodies at cornerback this year just because of the uncertainty.
Yeah. I'm extremely intrigued by the two other draft picks that we're talking about here. Obviously, JuJu Brents is going to make the team. He's going to potentially be a starting corner when he eventually gets out there. But Darius Rush is a player where I had him graded similarly as JuJu Brents. I had him as a day 2 player. Honestly, gun to my head, I probably would have preferred Darius Rush because of the long speed, because of just the flashes that he had in college. I mean, I'm not saying JuJu Brents is a bad player by any means. I had JuJu Brents as a day 2 player as well. But Darius Rush, I just really, really liked a lot of his film. I like the ball skills. I like the former wide receiver. I like the 4.3 speed combined with the 6'2 height. There's a lot of good things in his film, and I'm really shocked that he fell as far as he did. I could see round 4, I could see round 3, but like round 5, I was particularly shocked. I actually highlighted an article last week when I was talking about Darius Rush that we have seen corners of this mold, the late transition to corner from wide receiver, still superb athletes, but they still fall as late as they do. We've seen it with Richard Sherman back in the day. Obviously, we saw it with Tariq Woolen last year, where teams are kind of scared of that developmental prospect there. And then they come in and they're just way further ahead than what many people expected. And Destin Adams, our colleague over at Horseshoe Huddle, along with, I also heard similar things, has said that Darius Rush was the best player through rookie minicamp. And then into OTAs, when he did play a little bit, he was one of the best overall players on the team. So I think losing Isaiah Rodgers Sr. hurts, but I think when you have a player like Darius Rush, where the Colts were a lot higher on him than where they took him, they wanted him in round 4, but they were lucky to get him in round 5. They were happy to get him in round 5. I think this is a player who could start from year 1. And again, it's not going to be super pretty, but he has the traits to be a starter in the NFL. It's all about putting it all together. And then Jalen Jones, I talked about this a couple times. You're getting a very experienced SEC caliber corner who was successful in the SEC. Like last year, he was targeted 19 times the whole season as a starting corner in the SEC, only allowed 10 receptions. He didn't really have any pass breakups or interceptions or anything because he just wasn't targeted. I think it was like 1 target per like every 20 something defensive snaps there in pass coverage. He's a very experienced player. And yes, the long speed is a concern, and that's why he fell to round 7. But if the long speed wasn't a concern in the SEC, it gives me hope that it won't be as big a concern here in the NFL. You could see like a Levi Wallace type situation where I think Levi Wallace out of Alabama, he fell to, I think, UDFA status. Really good Alabama corner because of his long speed issues, came into the NFL and he turned out a couple good seasons there for the Bills. So I think we could see a similar thing with that with Jalen Jones. So yes, these 4 players are not sexy. They're not the big names that you want in your cornerback room. They're not the guys you want at cornerback 2 or cornerback 3, cornerback 4, but I think there is some potential there. Tony Brown, Dallas Flowers, really good special teamers, and Jalen Jones and Darius Rush, I think they have some potential despite being day 3 guys. So I'm optimistic about this group of players. I'm not going to say that they're going to come out and just light the world on fire and lock it down and be Stephon Gilmore level corners for the Colts, but I'm curious enough to see what these guys can do to where I probably wouldn't sign a veteran. I just want to see what these guys can do alongside the 2 starters.
Yeah, and unless they do sign a veteran, then you're looking at either Flowers or Rush most likely as the other outside starting corner. Kenny on the inside with likely Brents or either Flowers or Rush out there. It's going to be a youth movement. I mean, they're going to have to face some crafty veterans, and it's going to look ugly at times. But, I mean, these are guys they're really confident in. They have really high-end athletic and physical traits. Like, they're guys that they're betting on, and so far, none of these guys has looked, I mean, again, it's just practice, but like none of these guys have even looked like a liability, even as rookies, when they have the excuse to. So I'm with it. I'm with the youth movement. I think it's a good idea. But next up, who else is on the roster, and could they snag a roster spot? Because, I mean, we've been talking about guys who all really have a chance, but, I mean, the Colts love to keep 1 million receivers and 1 million cornerbacks on their summer rosters. So there's definitely still guys out there to talk about next. All right, Zach. So we've got 3 more guys to discuss. Kind of an interesting group, to be honest with you. So Kevin Tolliver is up first. Now, this is a guy who could have probably even been in the second group, to be honest with you. With Rodgers out, Tolliver is another guy that has rotated in and out and seen some snaps at outside corner. He has 328 snaps in his career, but he has not played since 2020. He's been a practice squad guy these last couple of years, and also ended up on injured reserve, I think, in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just, he just hasn't locked up a spot, and then had some injury stuff going on. But the Colts do seem to like him. I mean, again, he has experience in the league, and outside of Kenny Moore and Tony Brown, he's your other guy that has extensive NFL experience. Darrell Baker is another guy, another one over 6 foot, 200 pounds. It's not just receivers that the Colts like, those types. He was an undrafted guy last year with the Cardinals, so he fits that size mold as well. And then last up is a little guy, Cole Coleman, undrafted free agent rookie this year out of Elon. He's only 5'10", 193. And he either had a pick on Wednesday or a really nice pass breakup. I can't remember which one it was, but he made a nice play the other day. So he was someone who I definitely had to look at my paper roster and be like, who the heck's this guy? But Cole Coleman, he has made a play as well. So shoot, literally every guy we've talked about has some sort of outside chance or reason why they could make the roster.
Yeah, and Cole Coleman and Darrell Baker Jr., we're not going to talk about those guys extensively on here because it would just not do them justice, because I'm an encyclopedia for a lot of guys and stuff like that, but I would be lying to you if I said I watched a ton of Elon defense last season to prepare for Cole Coleman coming to the Indianapolis Colts. But, when we're talking about these guys, Dallas Flowers last year out of Pittsburgh State, big-time kick returner, big cornerback. Who would have expected him to come into the Colts and make some plays in the preseason and solidify that kick returner spot and actually make some big plays down the stretch last season as a kick returner? The Colts have kind of had this recent history under Chris Ballard where undrafted free agent defensive backs make the team. You can't rule out guys like Cole Coleman or Darrell Baker Jr. because we have seen the George Odoms. We have seen the Trevor Denbos. We have seen the Dallas Flowers. We've seen the Kenny Moore IIs make the team as undrafted free agents or waiver claim type guys come in and make the team and make an impact on the roster. So, I don't want to rule these guys out despite me not really knowing a ton about their game, but I will shout out Cole Coleman, one, representing my size and weight. I mean, wow, great job there, Cole Coleman, getting into the NFL at my size and weight. But also,
you're more than 5'10". Give yourself 5'11", tall king.
Yeah. Well, if I give myself 5'11", I got to give myself 6 foot there, Jake. But also Elon University, that's where my aunt and uncle went to college. So Elon University, beautiful little college there. I believe it's in North Carolina there. So very great, really great.
Come on and raise up.
Yeah. Yeah. But let's talk about Kevin Tolliver here, Jake, because he's a fascinating case because, you and I are big draft nerds. We love the draft, and especially back then, I think it was 2018 he came out. 2017, 2018 he came out.
Yeah, because he's played about 3 years, not since 2020. So I think it was 2018. Yeah,
2018. So that's when you and I were really into the draft stuff. And Kevin Tolliver, if I remember correctly, big LSU corner, like 6'1", 6'2", athletic.
He had some buzz.
Yeah, he had some buzz. People liked him as like a day 2 type corner, and I don't want to compare him to Darius Rush because Darius Rush, I think, fell for different reasons than Kevin Tolliver. But Tolliver, a player like Rush, where it's an SEC corner who's athletic, who was there on day 2, and everyone was expecting to go day 2 and fell late. Rush obviously went in round 5, and Tolliver went undrafted to the Chicago Bears. But Tolliver was a player that had a lot of buzz, was a good player in college for those LSU defenses. Did some decent things with the Bears his first couple seasons, but it really wasn't enough to justify as an undrafted free agent to continually, get starts and get playing time. But again, when you're comparing it to the rest of this cornerback room, I know you said Tony Brown Jr. has 440 snaps in the NFL, but almost all of them have been on special teams. If we're looking at actual defensive snaps in the NFL, it goes Kenny Moore the second, and then Kevin Tolliver. It goes Kevin Tolliver is the second most defensive snaps in this cornerback room going into this upcoming season. And I think, if you're looking for a guy in training camp who's going to show out and earn a spot or just earn playing time and stuff like that in the preseason, it's going to be the guy who knows what he's doing. You're going to have guys like Dallas Flowers who mostly spent time with the special teams unit last year. So he's starting to, get acclimated to the defense. Then you got a bunch of rookies. And then, Tony Brown knows what he's doing a little bit and stuff like that. But Kevin Tolliver is going to come in, and despite not playing the last couple seasons, he's an NFL corner. He's been in the NFL since 2018, despite being an undrafted free agent. He's played legit snaps on defense for an NFL team. I think in a lot of ways, he has a good chance to just show out because so many other players are going to be catching their bearings throughout training camp, and he's going to be a guy who knows what he's doing. So I'm curious to see what he can do in training camp and if he can earn himself a spot, because if you're a guy like Kevin Tolliver looking at this situation you have in front of you, you cannot imagine a better situation in your, 27, 28, as a 27 or 28-year-old player who hasn't played in the last couple seasons. Like, you cannot imagine a better situation for making a team than being here with the Indianapolis Colts right now. So Tolliver's a talented player who has experience in the NFL, and it would not shock me whatsoever if he comes into training camp and looks pretty good, because he's going to be one of the few guys who actually knows what he's doing,
Yeah, and track record doesn't really seem to matter prior to this because, you had mentioned, Kenny Moore being another guy that was allowed to move along to the roster. Pierre Desir was one man's trash is another man's treasure, came in at the same time Kenny Moore did. Right. He had been in the league a few years and just had bounced around and had been kind of given up on, I guess. And, Tolliver just hasn't played in the last couple of years. So, he could be better than a lot of people even know. I will say it's a very youthful, inexperienced group, but this is probably the most intrigued I've been by the cornerback group top to bottom in a while. Stephon Gilmore obviously gave the group pop last year, but Stephon Gilmore is like that dude. This is just a really interesting group because of the potential. Again, from top to bottom, you drafted 3 guys who are all huge. They're all super athletic. Everyone who fits exactly what you're looking for. You've got a couple X factors, guys who have been around the league a little bit, and then Dallas Flowers, who you're hoping takes that second year leap because you finally got him a little bit of snaps at the end of the year. But he showed something, at least as a kick returner last year, led the league in kick return average. So again, I'm excited about this group. They're going to take their lumps and they're going to have some really bad plays. They're going to get burnt sometimes, but I'm pretty excited to watch them this summer.
Yeah, I think exciting probably doesn't do it justice what I'm feeling about this cornerback room. I think just intrigued.
Yeah.
I think that just fits what I'm thinking. You can be excited, Jake. I'm not trying to take away your excitement.
Hey, I'm always excited. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take away your excitement here, but I think I'm just intrigued because it could go so many different ways. It could be odds are it's going to be horrendous. Odds are it's going to be horrible because we've seen it with young players. We've seen it with Rocky Sin a couple years ago where his first year was really bad. But after that, he became a pretty good corner for the Colts. Isaiah Rodgers Sr. did not play his rookie season. Marvell Tell had a couple of nice plays his rookie season, but overall it was not a good rookie season. I think it was 130 passer rating when targeted in coverage that season or something like that. Rookie corners, it's an extremely hard spot to be in. So I'm not expecting big things from this group, but I just want to see flashes. I want to see good moments. I want to see these guys get, that baptized by fire through experience out there. And I'm excited to see it. I don't want to see a veteran in there. I want to see these young guys out there. And if they crash and burn, I want to see them crash and burn. I want to be, that kind of crazy dude who can see this crash and burn happen. But, I'm excited about this cornerback group. I think excited works as well, but very intrigued, I think is the most most appropriate thing there. But everydayers, don't worry. This series is coming to a close. We are going to be covering the safety position next week, especially with the loss of Daniel Scott for the entire season. It's going to be a really interesting position group to cover. So all you beautiful everydayers, set that alarm bright and early for Tuesday morning next week, Tuesday morning. We're going to cover that safety position. If you guys don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also subscribe to Locked On Colts podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings and reviews, and we'll see you guys bright and early next week.